Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our special guest is Alan Lazaros. How you doing?
I am good. It's been a day. It's been back to back to back to backs. At this stage, I'm doing podcasting, training, coaching, and I'm very, very grateful because
Yeah.
I remember when it was crickets way back. And so I'm very grateful for the demand now. And yeah, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's amazing. And you have I think something I read, top 100 podcast, and probably a lot of listeners. I don't remember getting an invite to be a guest, but we can talk about that later.
We used to do guests way back.
Yeah.
We've interviewed hundreds of people. The podcast started way back in March of 2017, and we stopped having guests actually. And the reason why is because we have a holistic show. Talks about health, wealth, life, and love. And what we found is we'd interview a guest and we'd try to stay in their lane, and then they'd end up giving health advice and stuff. And eventually we just realized, you know what, we're going to just do solo. Kevin and I, he's my co-host, and it's 1% improvement, self-improvement in your pocket, health, wealth, life, and love every single day. And we did the guesting thing, and it was really good. I learned a lot, and there were several interviews that we did not air just because they were hot garbage.
We had a couple of those as well, but for the most part, they're really good. I love learning people's journeys. So let's start with, I want to get your origin story, because I think it's really interesting. I really want people to sort of try to resonate with this. So let's first start. Where did you grow up?
So Massachusetts. I grew up in a small town called Uxbridge. It's right in between Worcester and Providence, for anyone who knows the area. And my origin story is not a great one. Not a great one. So let me get my mic going here. I guess the first thing I would ask you is, how long-winded do you want me to be? Because I can condense 35 years into 5 minutes, or I can do 10 minutes.
I'll ask you. I'll guide you in that. So let me ask the question this way. You talk about, it's on most of your profiles and everything. You talk about you had a tragic event that happened when you were 2 years old. So let's maybe start with that, and then we can get into like your family dynamic, and I have some questions around that as well.
Perfect. Okay, so when I was 2 years old, so I had a mom who was 31, sister who was 6. My father was 28. He passed away in a car accident when I was 2. Yeah.
So I'm just curious about that. My main business is I have a genetic testing and analysis company. So, DNA kind of thing. So I'm really curious about generational trauma, and I'm curious about how that manifests itself. And I'm curious about, at 2 years old, obviously you're not cognitively, what does that really mean for you? But does that manifest itself in some sort of way epigenetically as you're kind of growing up in life, that you had this trauma when you were 2?
Yeah, I think that's the question, right? And I don't know if I have a great answer, but what I would say is the nature nurture thing is fascinating. I mean, my family has said, "Oh, you said that." My mom in particular, she said, "You said that just like John. You did that maneuver just like John. Your expressions were just like John. That reminded me of John." So, I mean, there's no question there's a genetic component. And that's been fascinating for me too, because I had a stepfather, Steve Lazaros, from 3 to 14. He left my family at 14, and we can get into that if you want to, but we were sort of trying to be the Lazaroses, so we didn't really associate much with the McCorkles. So my real last name is McCorkle. John McCorkle is my father. He was part of a big Irish Catholic family. It was Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette, and all J's, six kids. Yeah. And my dad passing away, I mean, talk about a start to life that is different, that statistically different. Most people do have dads.
Yeah.
And they grew up with dads. Not all of them. My business partner, his dad left. He didn't meet his dad until 27. And again, as far as adversity goes, it's one thing that I will say happened for me is there was no, and this is fascinating because in hindsight, it's very obvious, but at the time I didn't know any different. I noticed that other people have this belief about life that's different than mine. So I put it in these two sort of camps, and I remember my friend, my best friend growing up, he didn't have any death in any of, he didn't face mortality in himself or any of his loved ones until he was mid-20s maybe. And so I think some people grow up with this idea that life is sort of supposed to be easy, and when it's not, they think something's wrong. They think something's wrong with them or something's wrong with the world. And I actually think that's long-term pretty detrimental. I'm in the other camp. I actually think life is supposed to be devastatingly awful. And whenever it's not, that's actually awesome. And so despite life being challenging, you can make it meaningful, and you can make it matter, and you can matter. Right. And I just, the other camp is noticeably different statistically over time. And I do think it's detrimental. I think it's a detrimental mindset. I do. And people say, oh, well, life should be easy and your relationship should be easy. And I think that's a crock of shit, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you. And I think it creates a fear that is, I have friends of mine that live in fear because, you mentioned this too. When you have obstacles and you go to the gym or whatever it is, you work out and you have pain, and that's how you grow. If you don't have those obstacles in your life, you really don't have the opportunity to grow from those. So you're always fearful of things that you may not know because you didn't experience them. You heard them in someone, hey, oh my God, look at what's going on in the news. But there's a certain resilience that it builds into you that all right, you face something like that, and now you can overcome that. Along that theme, going back to you as a kid, what kind of kid were you? What kind of interest did you have? Were you interested in the sports? Were you into art? Were you like into school?
I appreciate the questions. This is so different than a lot of what I've done, and I know that's the intention, so I appreciate it. I respect it. When my stepdad left, so we didn't really associate with the McCorkles anymore when we were the Lazaroses. My mom and stepdad did not get along, and that's a polite way to put it on a public medium. Whoa. My mom, when my stepdad left, he took his entire extended family with him, and I haven't seen or spoken to any of them since. Not a single one of them. I did speak to my stepdad on Facebook Messenger a little bit in my mid-20s, and a little bit actually over the last couple of years. My mom got in a fight with my Aunt Sandy, and my Aunt Sandy sort of ostracizes us from her side of the family. So to this day, I've only ever seen 2 humans from my mom's side of the family. And we reconnected with the McCorkles a bit, but it was never super close. So I kind of lost 3 families by the time I'm 14. So it definitely developed this sort of abandonment thing. And I didn't know this at the time. It's not like I consciously was afraid of it being abandoned. So I was definitely sort of the Goodwill Hunting, weird esoteric genius type who surrounded himself with whoever he could and was afraid to be abandoned. And I didn't realize that at the time. But what kind of kid was I? Super say that, but I just was. I got straight A's through all of high school. I didn't even really try that hard, and that's scary to admit. I think I tried more than the average bear, don't get me wrong, but I didn't have to try that hard, to be honest. And I went to one of the best tech schools in the world. It's a WPI. It's Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's like a mini MIT, and yeah, in hindsight, it's weird because I built my first computer when I was 12, and I was a semi-pro gamer. Halo 1, I was one of the best in the world, and then Halo 2, I was 20th in the world, and that's one of the most popular, first-person shooter video games in the world. And I was always this dude who loved getting good at stuff. I was obsessed with mastery. I love learning. I'm super curious, especially about the human condition. I remember I was very upset when I found out how much I was lied to. So, and maybe this is me weirdo stuff. It is. It definitely is. I was so mad when I found out Santa Claus wasn't real. I was so mad that my parents lied. I don't like inaccurate thinking. inaccurate thinking bothers me a lot. And ignorance bothers me a lot, more than other people. Other people are very ignorant and they're totally cool with it. I am so devastatingly not okay with being ignorant. I can't stand ignorance. And I think ignorance just caused me a lot of pain. And I also think ignorance causes most people a lot of pain. And so I guess I was definitely super outgoing, super confident. Definitely had a bit of a traumatic childhood. But yet we did a lot of stuff. We had boats and snowmobiles and motorcycles, and my mom and stepdad had what I refer to now as a pleasure-centered paradigm. They had a deep core belief that life was about having as much fun as possible.
Uh-huh.
And what comes with that is not good. But there was a lot of partying, and there was a lot of friends, and a lot of friends of friends, and a lot of golf courses and boats and ski trips and fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, and I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to swear on this.
Oh, you can say whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. Yeah. To me, it was a lot of nonsense. And, but I also experimented a lot I saw a lot. I did a lot. We traveled a lot. I mean, we had a yacht. It was in the 90s too, when everyone had freaking money.
Yeah.
So at least in the US and .com bubble stuff. So yeah, I want to forgive and heal from that stuff. And not all my childhood was bad. Some of it was awesome.
Yeah.
But some of it was just awful. And it's so frustrating to see how little self-improvement there actually was. I think that's really what bothers me the most. And so now I built a self-improvement company to try to help that.
Well, you kept the Lazarus name though, right? So it's interesting because if you have a connection to your biological father who tragically passed away, and you don't have much of your stepfather, but you sort of continued to keep the name, I'm just curious about that. Did you ever think about that?
Yes, absolutely. So I've thought about that upside down and sideways actually, but ironically, I didn't start thinking about that until after 26. I got in my own car accident at 26.
That was my next question for you.
And
that pivotal moment in your life. So I'm glad you jumped right into it.
So weird, esoteric, sort of super achiever, social coward, high school friends, college friends, corporate friends, drank too much and too often, surrounded myself with the wrong people, but like super achiever guy, straight A's in high school, broke through high school and college, but got my computer engineering degree, got my MBA, and then 21st century US post 2008 era where things came back. And I just tons of tech companies, and I honestly don't even want to get into it. But I just climbed. I eventually ended up at almost 200 grand a year in my early 20s. I paid off 84 grand worth of debt in a single year. I had 150 grand in a Vanguard account with all the stocks that I had high certainty would win because I understand tech. And I was just doing extremely well financially, externally successful, but internally unfulfilled. And I was used to being broke, so I didn't have any freaking expenses. I had a 2004 Volkswagen Passat that I bought for $5 grand cash. I lived on a lake with my beautiful girlfriend at the time. Her name was Courtney, and rent was $500. I mean, it was just when you learn to need very little, you end up really flourishing, assuming you're super driven. And so I think in some ways I was running from my trauma. I think in other ways I was naturally an achiever who loves mastery and loves getting good at things. And then I also happen to be in the 21st century where engineers are just flourishing. I mean, you want to talk about a profession that wins. Engineering statistically is probably the highest in the 21st century. And so all of that's in hindsight. At the time, I was just kind of going with what I thought. But at 26, I got in my own car accident. And fortunately, I was driving that Volkswagen Passat because I used to call it the tank. And it was German engineered steel trap of a car. I mean, this was no fender bender. This was a head-on collision, my fault, not good. And the whole front end was completely smashed in, but the frame stayed, airbags deployed. So me and my little cousin were okay, physically. But mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I mean, my dad died at 28 in a car. So I'm sitting there questioning my existence. This is the second chance he never got, right? So I'm almost 36 now in November, so that's 10 years ago now, which is wild. But I went all in on self-improvement. I started my own company. I went past broke. And then I was internally fulfilled and chasing my dreams, but externally unsuccessful. Fitness model, fitness competitor, fitness coach, fitness shows. I I started mentoring 10 years ago, been coaching for 7 now. I'm a business coach now. But ultimately, all of it was this sort of soul searching. What is my passion? What is my purpose? How do I make a profit doing it? And when it comes to the name thing, identity, who am I? Birth father, stepfather, talked to him in my mid-20s too after that car accident. So all of that. Yeah, I've analyzed it upside down and sideways.
Yeah.
I've rewatched the movie of my own life constantly. I have a really good memory. I'm very grateful, and I remember all of it.
Yeah.
Almost all of it. And I rewatch it all the time, actually, and I reassess it. It's like when you're a kid and you watch a movie and then you watch it again.
Yeah.
I remember I told my girlfriend, I was like, sweetheart, I'm gonna watch American Pie, and I feel weird sneaking off to my office to watch American Pie, but it was a 90s movie that I saw when I was way too young, and I need to see what I was seeing.
Yeah.
And I need to analyze it from this new sense of awareness. And I'm weird like that. I'm a scientist. I need to know, right? And so anyways, it wasn't that bad. It's not a big deal. But what I do know is I'm rewatching the movie of my own life, and when you do that from this higher sense of awareness, I'm Alan 3.6 about to be, instead of Alan 2.6, instead of Alan 1.6. I'm going to be 36 years old. And so the 36-year-old version of Alan has a new understanding. And my new understanding is this. I think Lazarus is a part of my journey. And I did choose it. My mom gave me the option. Hey, do you want to take Steve's last name? And I said yes. And my real last name is McCorkle.
Yeah.
I'm actually Irish and German and Scottish, I think.
Well, you mentioned forgiveness too, so I'm curious. I want to go back to that for a second. Who do you want to forgive?
I think it's a duality. There's a book called The Self-Made Billionaire Effect. It was written, I think, in 2012, and it studied all the minds of the billionaires that were self-made. And there's only, I think, 3,600 or something total even now, and most of them are not self-made. It's usually generational wealth. And they said that number one in that book, the thesis was the number one character trait of a self-made billionaire is that they can hold two seemingly opposing ideas in their consciousness simultaneously. And I've always been doing that. And whether or not I'm going to be a billionaire, that's not what I meant. My point is, I do forgive and I don't want to.
Right.
And I'm always holding that duality. People say, oh, you need to forgive. And, well, you also need to not let that keep happening and set boundaries. And at what point do you just make it okay? Is that totally fine now? So there's a place for redemption. There's a place for forgiveness. And there's a place for healing.
But
And there's
who
also
is-
a
who
place
is-
for...
who are you looking for? Is it your stepfather? Is it your mom? Is it maybe yourself?
Yeah, I think forgiving self is important. You know what's interesting is I didn't consciously think that any of this was my fault, but unconsciously I think I took it on. I remember at 14, 14 years old, stepdad leaves, takes his entire extended family with him, sister moves out, mom get kind of ostracized from that side of the family. And I remember looking into the future. When the past is painful and the present is painful, you look into the future to try to escape. And then you see the future, you go, uh-oh, future looks pretty terrible too. And so then you rise to the occasion if you have self-belief. I actually think genetic potential creates self-belief, and then self-belief feeds on itself.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have a fixed mindset and low self-belief, so adversity is just adversity.
Right.
My adversity, most of the time, not every time, became my advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And I always had a lot of self-belief. I was born in a free country. My country invested in my mind because I got scholarships and financial aid. I got to go to one of the best tech schools in the world, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without where I grew up. I'm also a white Caucasian male. I get it, right? So I have certain advantages that not everyone has. And the U.S. is by far the largest economy. It's really not even close if you look at the numbers. And Massachusetts is one of the most educated per capita places on the planet. And so I happen to be lucky in a couple things and really freaking unlucky, it turns out, in a lot of other stuff. So all of us have to play the cards we're dealt. And when it comes to forgiveness, I think I needed to forgive myself for the poor choices I made with who I allowed to spend time with. Because if I could go back, I would probably, the playful version is I would punch myself in the face and say, get out of here now. The more compassionate, non-playful version is I would sit myself down and say, you are different. You know it. You always are going to be. You always have been. And you can't stay here. And you can't save these people. And you have a calling and you know it. And you have to have the courage. You're a coward. You have to have the courage to set boundaries. You have to have the courage to sail away. You have to have the courage to speak up for what you believe in when someone says ignorant, racist crap.
Is that more in your family, or is that more in your friends, or both that you were surrounded by?
All of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I saying this on a public medium, I never could have done this before, but I'm wildly disappointed. I playfully refer to where I grew up as the Boulevard of Broken Dreams. And I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in the male role models, the lack thereof. I'm disappointed in the lack of leading by example. And I'm mostly disappointed with the lack of self-improvement. The personal responsibility and self-improvement was non-existent.
But don't you think that, because we were talking earlier, I don't want this to be like a therapy session. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about, having obstacles in the way and having, some of that. Not everything is a smooth road. So if you didn't have, that type of situation that you're in, maybe it wouldn't drive you to pursue that personal development and that journey. And then you're finding your purpose in what you're doing right now with the Next Level University as well.
Yeah, so that's the duality. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
And whoa. But that's the thing, right? So I always say this to people, and this is where we can talk more about what anyone can do to really reanalyze their existence, which I think is important, honestly. I'm a weird existentialist. Obviously, you are too. You wouldn't be doing this if you weren't. I mean, the amount of people who don't look at this stuff, it blows my freaking mind. Like, how could you not reassess your existence? It's not just going to get better. Life gets better by design and by cognitive effort. It doesn't just, your future is not going to be bright on its own. Neither is mine, by the way. It's by design. And so anyways, if anyone is out there and feels like they're not living a meaningful life or they're not in their purpose, and I do feel on purpose and in my purpose, and I feel deeply fulfilled and I have meaningful work, so I'm very grateful for that. I always ask these questions. One is what frustrates you the most? What injustice in the world pisses you off the most? And it's not socially correct to get pissed off, so we don't feel it. The truth is, it does piss me off that no one tried to help me understand self-improvement. It does piss me off that no one taught a self-improvement class in high school. It does piss me off that I took my first finance course when I was in my MBA. It does piss me off that there was no personal development books that were encouraged for me. And now I'm encouraging that for people because I didn't have it, right? So I think that redemption is a thing where you look at the injustices of the world, and there's a lot of them to go around, and you get emotional. Let it touch you. Let it piss you off. Feel it. Cry it out. Breath work, meditation, whatever it is for you. And then do something about it. Do something about it to make it better. And if you can do that, the whole world becomes a better place. And you do it by leading by example. And as corny as it is, be the change that you wish to see in the world. And so, yeah, I went through all of that adversity, and it was really, really challenging, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. However, I also am very grateful for the man that I've become. And there's a lot of people who went through the adversity that I went through. Not a lot. There's people who went through the adversity that I went through or something very similar, but they didn't fare so well. They did take the drugs and alcohol route.
Yeah.
And I did too for a while, by the way. So people who have a high ACE score, adverse childhood experiences, You can take an ACE score, you can research this. It shows the statistics of leading to an early death. And people with high ACE scores statistically struggle with trauma. And you talked about generational trauma and all that kind of stuff. And so the only way this is going to change is if we raise awareness and if we work on ourselves and if we're humble enough to actually listen to this stuff and hear this stuff and face the hard realities. Like Santa Claus isn't real. The Tooth Fairy isn't real. The Easter Bunny isn't real. People do lie to you. And you need to take off the rose-colored glasses and see the world for what it really is. And yes, it's sad. However, it's also empowering because now you can actually have accurate data in your thinking, and you're not a self-driving car with inaccurate data constantly driving off a cliff and then blaming the world, when in reality it's just that doesn't have accurate data on the terrain.
So how did you get the concept, the idea to start Next Level University? Maybe you can tell people a little bit what it is and what you do.
Yeah, so Next Level University is exactly what it sounds. It's Next Level U, pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
This is the iPhone 14, and I'm Alan 3.6. I'm a computer engineer, so I think in those terms. And Alan 3.6 is going to be way more effective than Alan 3.5. So Next Level U.
Yeah.
Level up your life, love, health, and wealth, and your life will improve when you improve. It really comes down to taking personal responsibility, regardless of how hard your life has been, and building that sort of bigger, better, brighter future, and then working toward it through humility and work ethic and self-belief. And it's a place where you go to learn how to reach your potential. And I say how, because there's a lot of people who talk about why, and we can sit here and we can philosophize all day, but I mean how. How do I actually do it? Okay, metrics, habits, goals. What are we doing? Okay, got it. Self-belief, self-worth. There's a formula. So that's what Next Level University is all about. It's really an engineer's approach to personal development.
So in speaking about that, and I think it's really interesting what you just said. And I want to pause you in that because there's a lot of people, I'm a big student of everybody from Jim Rohn, who was Tony Robbins' mentor, to, Joe Dispenza, and everybody in between. But there are pieces of personal development where people are like, oh my God, it's another, coach. Are there specific habits, routines? Because to me, it's action oriented. It's like I can read a whole bunch of things, but if you just esoterically just tell me this is what I need actions. I need to know habits, routines. What do I need to do in order to improve my performance so I can be the ultimate version of me? So I can be Len, 5.2. That I'm 52. So that's my age. So.
Well, that's where it gets the rubber meets the road. And that's where, and I'm with you too, because I've studied this industry of self-improvement upside down and sideways. I'm talking all the way back to Zig Ziglar, Og Mandino, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins.
I'm old enough to see those guys, by the way. I see Jim Rohn.
I see you. And the truth is they're all talking about one part of the spectrum. They're not talking about the whole spectrum. One guru says, go with the flow and don't worry about resistance. And the other ones do hard stuff every day and work your face off. And the truth is and metaphor is the medicine that will cure one patient will actually kill another. And that's why I love one-on-one coaching the best, because when you catch a wide net, you lose meaning. It's like you can still learn, however, it's not actionable. So for example, everyone out there listening or watching, some of you, if depending on your goal, depending on your circumstance, depending on the number in your bank account, depending on your core values, depending on your unique genetics and your unique potential, depending on the country you live in, depending on the government, depending on what business and industry you're in, this is a good idea. All decision making is predicated on data. It's like a self-driving car. If I take a right when there's a truck there, I'm going to crash. But if the car has a blind spot, in my Tesla it's called an occluded camera. When one of the cameras occluded, it won't let you do self-driving because it knows that it has a blind spot. And so I can't really answer that question effectively, because here's what I will tell you. People come to me in coaching. I've coached for 7, almost 8 years now. I'm talking thousands of hours. I have it tracked. I'm at like 8,000 something. One-on-one individuals all over the world. You have this goal. Okay. If that goal is predicated on low self-awareness, you're never going to achieve it. I'm never going to beat LeBron James at basketball, no matter how hard I freaking try, no matter how much I jump up and down, Tony. Okay, so it has to be predicated on actual genetic understanding, which you obviously value. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that company of the DNA thing. All right, so self-awareness is first. Number 2, you have a goal based on self-awareness. Then you need the metrics and habits that reverse engineer and actually lead to that goal. Yeah. And then the third piece, and this is by far the freaking rabbit hole, is your identity. Your identity is who you want others to believe you are, who you want to believe you are, and then who you really are. And we're all basically trying to center up between who we need to be to achieve our goals, who we want to be based on our fluffy feel-good aspirations, and then who we actually are when no one's watching. And to me, the epicenter of that is where I try to find. And I try to set my goals and metrics based on that. I can try not to be an engineer for the rest of my life, and I'm never going to win. Why not just go all in on being an engineer and thinking like an engineer, because that's who the freak I am.
Well, I think you did answer the question, by the way. I just wanted to go back. You said I can't answer that question. You did, because pardon the pun, everything is personal. That's because you have to have a personal conversation with somebody. There is no cookie cutter. And I think it's really important for people to understand when you go to see, and I've walked on coals, and I've done all the, but it's not directed to me. Not everything is directed to me. And what a great analogy. I can jump up as much as I want. I'm never going to be, 6'8". It's not going to happen. It makes total sense. You have to understand what individual wants and tailor this specifically to the individual. Maybe there's a way. And the other thing you said, it was really, really important. I want people to resonate with that too, is understanding oneself. Really, really getting to know yourself, being self-aware. And then from there, maybe there are strategies, and I'll ask you as a question, are there strategies that people can use to assess their own personal strengths and weaknesses so they can get better, get to know themselves better?
Yeah, there's a ton of them. I'm sure there's the DISC assessment, there's Myers-Briggs, there's Hexaco. Hexaco's a good one. But at the end of the day, it was after my car accident that I started to really self-reflect. Women, I do think, statistically mature faster than men, and I know why. I think I know why. I know why. I'm so smart. I think I know why. One of the reasons is they're encouraged to have a diary. I didn't have a journal till I was 26 years old, right? I didn't self-reflect enough. And that's so detrimental. I was science, technology, engineering, mathematics, business, and finance. I knew the economy, and I knew the global, and I knew technology. I knew which companies would win, and professional develop, LinkedIn, cover letter, resume, And truth be told, some people need that. Some people are not professionally developed. You need to be more effective. You need to understand productivity. You need to know how the freaking economy works. However, I didn't understand myself. I didn't understand where I was statistically different. My therapist said this to me literally today. She said, Alan, you're never going to feel a strong sense of belonging, and you have to accept that because you're in the 0.05% percentile of multiple intelligences. There's a book by, I don't know the author. It's called Multiple Intelligences. It talks about the 9 different types of genius. The point is I'm in a lot of them, as much as I'm not allowed to say that. And so I'm this.
Why are you not allowed to say that?
Socially, I think.
Oh, because it's like bragging in a way? Yeah. It's interesting you bring that up, because I grew up with this whole notion of you can't brag. But if you're not able to have a positive, loving conversation with yourself, you're taking away from yourself. Where you brag about your best friend, and then you don't have that conversation. So your voice in your head becomes this negative voice. Oh shit, did I just say that? Like the same thing you just said now. It takes away from giving yourself that love. If that's the way it is, that's the way it is, and accept it and give yourself a hug.
That's the self-love and self-acceptance piece.
Yeah.
And the self-acceptance piece is so critical. I didn't have the self-acceptance. Some people, and my business partner, Kevin, has the greatest quote about this. He said, you are afraid that you are either afraid, everyone's afraid. You are either afraid, 2 types of people who are afraid and liars, right? You are either afraid that all of you is not enough. That's the majority of the population. The majority of the population struggles with inadequacy. And I trigger the hell out of them, by the way.
Yeah.
Or you're afraid that all of you is too much.
Mm-hmm.
I have that one. I mean, come on. This is me dialing it down. Most people think I'm dialing this up. They think this is ego. I'm dialing this down.
Well, that's the whole thing. I think that's what it is. We are so conditioned to be able to keep our ego in check. But if we're able to say, listen, like I was diagnosed with ADD when I was a kid, and I was going through school, and school was not interesting to me. And I'm sort of similar in a way. I didn't really try. Went to school, went to college and all that stuff. It wasn't stimulating. So when they were saying, oh, Len's not paying attention, Len is talking, he's disruptive, it's not my fault. It's your fault. You're not stimulating me. You're not teaching to me. You're teaching to the sheep, but you're not teaching to me. And that's the difference. And if I realize it's not my ego, it's just the way it is. Not everybody's created equal. We're all different. 99.9% of us is the same, but there's a 0.1% genetically that makes us different. And if that's the case, and I know what the hell that is, and I can focus on my strengths, maybe my weaknesses will disappear because I'm tripling down on what I'm best at.
Well, what people, and nowadays too, with technology, and I'm very grateful for that, and social media particularly, the people who are the most successful externally are the people who they are in a position where they find, and you can look this up, there's a lot of research on this, a great book by Stephen Kotler called The Art of Impossible, and he talks about how, okay, so LeBron James, for example, it's just a great example everyone knows. I'm not saying anything great or negative about LeBron. The point is that obviously he has a natural inclination for athletics genetically above me. And no matter how hard I try in basketball, even though I'm pretty freaking good, it's not going to be close. And I guarantee you the same freaking thing is true in computer engineering. And that is okay. And I'm courageous enough to actually say it. The problem in life, we have real life and we have social world. There's two worlds we all have to live in. In the real world, I can say I'm a genius. And I know that's true. I knew it when I was a kid. I built my first computer when I was 12. I proved the textbook wrong when I was 14. I had to go to the smarter teacher to prove it when the whole class was against me. I got straight A's without even trying. I know it. It's true. It's a fact. It is what it is. Whatever. But socially, you're not allowed to say that. But I need to know it in here. And by the way, every strength comes with a weakness. I might be a genius, but I don't have belonging. I might be a genius, but most people say, ooh, not like me. I trigger the hell out of everyone's inadequacy. If you have any insecurity whatsoever about your intelligence and you're not emotionally mature, you are going to freaking hate me and you are going to lash out at me or avoid me. And what if I internalize that?
Do you think that's really true? Or do you think that's your belief that you've built up over time because you've had some experiences and you're like, oh shit, it's got to be that again. It may not be 100% true. And also when you were talking about, Stephen Kotler, I did his flow class and all that other stuff.
Oh, nice. What'd you think?
I thought it was great. It helped me find, I already knew. So this is the whole thing. It's like, even with personal development, you're like, yeah, of course. But if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have like that smack in the face. Of course, in my flow state is, I was during COVID, I was doing all kinds of, I was bored. I'm like, I need stimulation. So I'm taking every single class I could possibly take.
Nice,
and I would
good for
hike
you.
and I would go out and hike. And I'm like, well, that is my flow state. I am not thinking
Nice.
and ideas are like flowing into my head. So I have my physical and my mental stimulation, but I thought it was great. But that's what I wanted to go back to because I keep resonating with this thought is I got smacked if I was bragging. So I got to be really in check. I can't do that, which turns into, am I good enough? It creates a limiting belief in me. So it's that self-work that you have to get this shit out of the way so you can give yourself the love. I accept myself in the way that I am. And I'm the same as you in the way that I hate to study, but I love to learn, and I need it. It feeds me. Some people are like, well, I need to go shoot, 500 baskets every day. That's my state. This is my state. And having conversations with people and learning from them is the best way. Like even reading books, I realized that with my ADD, if I read a book, like I have a hard time concentrating. My mind's all over the place. But if I am on a hike and I am listening to my book, holy, it's like a download, So we all have this whole thing with learning how we learn ourselves. But I wanted to ask you about this whole notion of limiting beliefs, this message that we keep telling ourselves, it may not really be true.
It might not. It might not be. And the weird philosophical understanding of this is really actually quite scary. So if anyone's clinging to certainty, you probably already shut this off. So it is what it is. I told Kevin this once because decision making is one of the most important things in life and in business. Where you invest your time, effort, and money into the right persons, places, things, and ideas will, based on your reverse engineering of an outcome, is what's ultimately going to get you where you are. Now, at the end of the day, bad things happen to good people, good things happen to bad people. You play the hand you're dealt, and the economy and all that stuff. Like, there's a lot that's outside your control. However, what you say, think, do, feel, and believe is completely within your control. And what you say, think, do, feel, and believe in response to what other people say, think, do, feel, and believe is in your control. And what you don't say, think, do, and believe, meaning what you don't do, is also your responsibility. So you can put yourself on the statistical side of success, mathematically speaking. And it's very hyper-rational. I have 3 core values. One's legacy, one's rationality, and one's candor. And the truth is, I told Kevin this, I said, I'm never fully right, but I'm definitely never fully wrong. So do people hate me? No. Is there a part of them that feels inadequate and less than around me that is triggered? Yes. Not always, but yes. And if I internalized that as I'm a bad person, that's where my core wound comes in of unlovable and that kind of thing. So
it's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that adds to the
trigger anchor.
challenges.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's a trigger anchor thing. So you're starting to think about that, and it's like a domino effect. Oh shit, trigger anchor. That's me as a 14-year-old kid who's feeling this and that.
Abandonment.
Exactly.
And then what's my response to that? Mm-hmm. Here's the weird part, and this is now clear to me, even though back then it wasn't. What if my trigger to that was work harder, aim higher, get smarter? And what if that made it worse? And then my response to that was work harder, aim higher, get smarter.
Yeah.
And what if that made it even worse? And that I actually think is what happened.
Me too, by the way.
I became nice. Okay, so I became a social coward and I fawned. So there's 4 trauma responses. There's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Yeah. I didn't understand fawn until my late 20s or early 30s. Yeah. And fawn is become a social coward. You're so afraid to be unloved or abandoned that you just don't share your truth. I'll give you an example. I had someone in my life who said, well, Alan, nowadays, real estate's the only way to make money. And I remember thinking to myself, that's got to be the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Tech companies, sir. By the way, if it was ever not true, it's now in the 21st century. Now, real estate's great, commercial, residential, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you, tech is the way. Have you heard of the internet, sir? But I didn't say anything. Yeah. I didn't say anything. I didn't have the courage. It wasn't worth it. And I walked away with lower self-respect. And he walked away thinking he's smarter than me.
Yeah.
And I'm going, wait a minute, why doesn't anyone respect me? Oh, because I'm not actually calling them out on their ignorance. And if they knew how smart I was, they wouldn't need me because it takes one to know one, right? So the point of all this is I became a social coward who shelled up in social settings, and then behind the scenes, I transitioned that to fight, aim higher, work harder, get smarter, baby. Yeah. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. And I just kept running that pattern. And every time I would be treated unjustly, I would go behind the scenes, find the power within me, and work harder, aim higher, and get smarter. And I realized the more and more contrast between me and other people, the worse and worse this got. And luckily, I'm now self-accepting and actually healing, and that's why therapy is critical. I mean, if you want a coach, you need a therapist. That was me. If you want a therapist, you got to go get a coach. You probably don't know how to do it. Coaches are about the future and how to do it, external success. Therapy is about self-worth, inner value, inner work, past, and how you tick.
I'm
And
so glad you brought that up, by the way, because there's a lot of people I talk to who are like coaching. Well, I go to a therapist. That's completely different thing. So
I
I'm
know.
so glad you brought that up.
Thank you. Yeah. So again, I'm a coach primarily,
Hmm.
and that doesn't mean we don't do identity work. That doesn't mean we
Sure.
don't have an aspect of therapy.
Right.
But I'm primarily a coach. My therapist, she said to me one time, her name's Carol, and she said, "Oh, I can tell you're just so much more confident than you used to be." And I'm a scientist, right? So I'm sitting there like, I've never had anyone question my confidence. Most people think I'm freaking arrogant.
Yeah.
And I finally figured out why, by the way. If you have level 10 self-belief and only level 8 humility, I look level 2 arrogant.
See. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
I always wondered, why do I seem so arrogant to everybody? It's mathematical certainty. I'm actually calculating it. So I have mathematical certainty that you don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Externally, but I don't have the confidence itself.
Yeah.
I do
Makes
now.
sense.
Right? So when I asked her, I said, what do you mean? I don't think I've ever had anyone question my confidence. And she said, no, I mean confidence in who you are. Oh, got it. There's two types of confidence. There's external confidence, which is called self-efficacy, which is self-belief. It's your ability to achieve something externally. I have that. Whatever, baby. Let's rock and roll. Okay? It's the self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
It's the self-respect. It's the self-confidence. It's
And the self-love too.
Self-love.
You still have some of those injuries probably that'll allow you that you can revert back to because there's still some triggers there. I'm just for the sake of time, I wanted to ask you a few more questions. You talked about legacy, and what is that legacy that you would like to leave, and then maybe how can individuals start working on their own meaningful legacy?
Yeah, so legacy, I have it on my desktop background here. I see it every day. And it's a deep belief in a positive impact far beyond your own life. I saw the impact that my father had, both positive and negative, and I experienced it, right? So mortality for me was never an intellectual concept. It was a experienced concept. And then when I got in my car accident, that was the last breaking the cycle. So how do you have a legacy? I think the question would be, what is the legacy what are you living for beyond yourself? I think of it in three. I think fulfillment comes from three things. And this is a formula, and I'm not just saying this. I've, like I said, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours dissecting this upside down and sideways. I think fulfillment comes from three things. Growing to your own unique potential, and underline unique on that. Maximizing your greatest level of contribution, unique contribution. My contribution is different than LeBron's, different than yours. And then the third one is maximizing your own unique quality of life. And quality of life is the day-to-day. So growth, contribution, and quality of life. And your quality of life is, if you adore film, you make time to go to the movies. If you adore nature, you make time to go hiking like you talked about. It's maximizing flow and meaning. And so I think fulfillment comes from meaning, and usually the things that are meaningful are actually the hard stuff, not the easy pleasure, hedonic way to live. And so legacy is, what is the change you wish to see in the world? Rather than just quoting Gandhi, I actually mean that practically. Like, leading by example is everything. And I never said this before because I was too much of a coward, but I started saying it this year. If you're not leading by example, just shut up. I'm so sick of it. Don't talk about fitness when you're out of shape. Stop writing books on stuff when you're not doing it. Stop saying you love your marriage and then getting divorced. I'm so disappointed. And I've met some of the people in this industry at the top of the game. And the non-leading by example when no one's watching bothers me to my core. You will never hear me talk about something that I am not practicing.
Yeah, it's the
You will,
hypocrisy. You're absolutely right. I mean, you see that all the time. I had a conversation with my mom the other day. I met a doctor who's telling her how to do better. The guy is overweight, and then I walked out, and he's smoking a cigarette. It's like
no,
I was like, oh, right. That's the guy I want to get advice
that's
from.
the
The hypocrisy.
guy.
Exactly.
The world would change immediately
Yeah.
if everyone stopped talking and started leading by example when no one's watching.
Yeah.
And so that's the legacy that I want to leave. I think that's the legacy everyone should leave. Let us all sweep our own porch. The whole world will be clean, type of thing. Personal responsibility. I do. I believe in that. No matter how hard your past has been, no matter how hard your present is, you can take personal responsibility to make something meaningful of it and lead by example. And that's really what inspires people. I have a fitness streak going since March 1st of 2022. Every single day, I haven't missed a day with my beautiful girlfriend Amelia for almost 1,000 days. We're coming up on, I think it's 960, so 2.5 years. And my whole freaking team has streaks. One of my team members, Brandon, has run a mile a day. He calls it miles for mindset. I'm not kidding. 760 miles straight, 760 days in a row in the cold. He's in Chicago. So freezing cold weather doesn't matter. He's out there, miles for mindset. And so the ripple effect of positive impact is through leading by example. And if I were to end on something, that's what it would be, is just lead by example. It will ripple outward. People will watch, and it will rub off on everybody.
Love that. I agree. Do we have 2 more minutes? I can ask you a couple music questions.
Yeah, of course.
Cool. All right. So I always ask my guests, do you remember? And if so, what was the very first concert that you attended?
Oh, jeez. Oh, I'm not proud of this. I went to a Sean Paul concert. So
he was
one of my-
great, man. Back in the day.
He had it going on. I'm not a huge music guy. I love music in the gym.
Yeah.
I think classic rock was awesome, but also I think that's just because my mom and stepdad loved it. But I went to a Sean Paul concert in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Cool.
Let's just say it was a little low vibe I think I was 14 or 15 or something. And my best friend's sister had tickets, and we went. And I've not been to many concerts, but that was
do you remember the last concert you attended?
Yes, it was a Taylor Swift concert in Foxborough.
Cool. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know.
And honestly, the what you're sensing underneath that is I do regret both of those. Both of those were not my ideas, and both of those I didn't have the courage to say no.
They're experiences, man.
Yeah,
It's all good.
exactly. Fair.
So I don't know how we're going to do with this one, but I'll give it a shot. So for the next year, you can only listen to 5 albums. And I'm going to preface, especially for you, because you don't know, you said music that well. You don't have to mention the name of the album. It can be like, a Taylor Swift album as an example. So what will be those 5 albums or artists?
Airplanes version 2 with Eminem's verse in it.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite songs of all time. The What If Marshall Mathers never picked up a pen, I just got the chills. Yeah, what if I had a good childhood? What if, right? So that would be, I'll just name songs. That would be one. You know what I adore is movie scores. I adore movie scores. The Gladiator movie score, that's one for sure I would need to put in there. Corny on this one, but The Lion King score, Circle of Life, for sure. A lot of metaphors for The Lion King, for me. Father passed away, stepdad, right? Come back to Pride Rock to try to become. Yeah, favorite movie. 2 more. Oh, you got to go Star Wars Episode 2 with the love song between, Anakin and Padme. That was when I was a kid. I saw that movie 5 times in theaters. I rode my bike 5 times in theaters. I know you said albums, but I'm doing songs.
It's fine.
The last song. There's a score from The Way of Water where Natiri, I'm a love film.
Yeah.
Natiri sings with beads, and we listen to that all the time. I love that. That you want to talk about a centering song that keeps you present when you're a esoteric superachiever? That's the one.
Cool. All right, final bonus question. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
Nice. Log home. Small room. Xbox, Dreamcast, video games in the corner. Computer in the right corner. So big time gamer. 90s, early 2000s was the gaming heyday. It was awesome. Massive multiplayer online games were brand new. StarCraft, Diablo 2. Did you ever game?
I'm old, so I gamed with my Atari 2600.
Got it.
In the day.
Okay, gotcha.
No, I had a few video. I think I had a Sega and all that stuff.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
But more
So,
sports games. I played
N64,
sports.
Dreamcast, PlayStation, mostly N64, Dreamcast, Xbox, and then small bed, open door closet, red rug. I always had those stars on the ceiling, stars from when I was a kid. It was a really beautiful home. We lived on a lake. It was gorgeous.
Do you have
It was
anything
really
on the
gorgeous.
walls, like any posters or art or anything that was memorable?
Yeah, I had a picture of a wolf with an eagle.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I actually have wolves behind me. I don't know if you can see them.
Yeah.
But there's two wolves that are covering bookends to my
bookends, yeah.
5 favorite books.
Yeah.
And I've always felt a little bit like the cool thing about the wolf is you're a lone wolf. However, you also have a pack. And the last thing I'll end with, this is a leadership thing that I realized in my 30s. People always said you can never achieve anything great alone, and it's true. However, one player can make a team great because you can set the pace. And so that's why I love the wolf as my spirit animal, because the strength of the wolf is the pack, and the strength of the pack is the wolf.
Yeah, makes sense.
And so it's a duality, yeah.
Alan, where can people find out more about you? Where can they engage with the Next Level University? Anything else you want to share?
Absolutely. So if you're out there and you really are humble and you feel lost or hopeless or struggling, and you really want to dial in your GPS and start getting on a meaningful path, I will be happy to help you. Next Level Universe is the name of the website, nextleveluniverse.com, spelled just like it sounds. The podcast is Next Level University, 1% improvement in your pocket every single day from anywhere on the planet, completely free. Health, wealth, life, and love. If you are humble and have work ethic and grit and we really want to build something meaningful, we are for you. If you don't have humility, don't reach out. I'm just going to bug you. And if you have any entitlement whatsoever and you want big results for minimal effort, you're not going to like us, so don't bother. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, you can Google my name. Thank you so much for having me. This was very powerful and way outside my comfort zone, particularly talking about some of the things I shared. So I leaned into courage. I appreciate it. And I appreciate how respectful you were asking questions that are scary on a public medium, but also really important.
Well, I'm grateful for you not just being on, but really sharing, because I think your truth was very evident, and it's easy to connect in that way, so people can connect on that level of your vibrational energy. So I appreciate you being on and sharing that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Len. Thank you, Len. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment, I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.